Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, we have with us a very, very, very special guest, and she goes by the name of Jane Anderson. Jane is a personal branding and presentation skills expert. She is a communication expert with over 12 years in personal branding and LinkedIn profile development. Jane works with experts in their field to grow their businesses and increase their leads. Her clients include Virgin Australia, Cisco, Lego, IKEA, Rio Tinto, and Origin Energy. Jane has been featured in Business Insider, Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, Courier Mail, and Marie Claire, and is the host of the #1 ranked iTunes podcast, The Jane Anderson Brand You Show. Jane is a nominee for the Telstra Women's Business Awards for 2016 and a mentor on Thought Leaders Business School, helping clever people be commercially smart. Jane has been endorsed by LinkedIn as one of the top influencers in Australia and New Zealand. She is also the author of 3 books, including Connect, How to Leverage Your LinkedIn Profile for Business Growth and Lead Generation in Less Than 7 Minutes per Day. So without further delay, welcome Jane.
Hi, Yannick. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So before we actually get into the meat of, picking your brain on this awesome podcast, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and, just how you've gotten to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So, well, when I was growing up, I think something that I'd always been really interested in was the world of business, but while I was at high school, my very first job was in retail, and I worked for a company called Mather's Shoes here in Australia. And Mather's Shoes is a really big sort of family type shoe store, and they have branches all over Australia. And so I started working for the Mather's shoe brand back when I was 14, but what the key thing was though was that the Mather's brand was owned by the Mather's family, and that was a fairly big sort of iconic family here in Australia, and they sold their company and moved on. But I really started in retail, and I remember the experience was with customer service. I remember I wasn't allowed to have a customer by myself for the first month.
Wow.
We had to have, somebody with us the whole time. The standards of training were so high, but it led me down the path of really starting to become interested in personally branded businesses. So the Mather's name is still known here in Australia. They're 3rd generation retailers, now 4th generation retailers, and I've gone on to since work in other industry, like I worked in state government, in roads and transport, and but I kept coming back to retail. So I essentially spent about 15 years in retail all up. So I was an area manager. I did a marketing degree, but I've always I love customers, and I love being able to make them happy and being able to help them. But one of the things that I found with working with the Mather's family, I worked with the Mather's brand and the family all up for 12 years. What I found was that people really what drew people to the business was because everybody had a story about, the family. Everybody sort of knew something about them, or they knew the daughters, and what I noticed was that this family had a really strong reputation in the community. They were very well respected, and my job was to make sure that their values of customer service, that I adopted those and did things the same as if they were in the store. So I went on to be an area manager for them. I then went on to work for a super retail group, Super Cheap Auto here in Australia. It's one of the fastest growing retail companies. So they have just over 10,000 staff. So I was the learning and development manager for them. And then once I always knew that I would go out on my own. It's something I have always been committed to is customer service. But I live in a city in Australia called Brisbane. But I grew up in the country in a place called Lismore, which is, you know, pretty laid back country kind of town, beach, coastal kind of place.
Nice.
But I moved to the city when I finished university because there just weren't the jobs there. And so now I've gone on and doing all the things that you mentioned before.
Very nice. Awesome. So you really had a very rounded and exposed experience based on the things that you've done that has really led you to have many different customer experiences. So you mentioned that you love working with customers. Now, you personally as a customer, because we all play both sides of the fence, whether we work for a company or we own our own business, we'll have to serve someone that we'll deem as our customer. And then on the flip side, we are customers ourselves every day to businesses that we patronize. So how do you feel about customer service on a global level?
At a global level, I think it's, and you mean as in like the concept of customer service today?
Right. How do you feel? Do you think it's doing well? Do you think there's room for improvement? What are some of the things that are hindering everyone to really embrace this whole customer journey and not just look at business in terms of dollars and cents, but see that there are people behind it?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. I think at a global level, I think from what I watch and what I see in talking to clients is that I think there's not the one way to do things anymore. So, there's so many channels, the way that you access customers and how, particularly now, like digital, what's the digital platform that matches the face-to-face customer experience?
Right.
If you look at, I think I was talking to someone the other day and they said, the only reason why I go on Twitter is to make a customer service complaint, because if I can't get the answers, they'll soon answer me if I'm on Twitter, because it's, so the customer service experience, I think, is a lot more transparent than it used to be in the past.
True.
If somebody has a bad experience, it's not that hard for us to go on and find out, like people make comments on Facebook pages and Twitter. So the digital footprint as part of your customer experience in your business, I think, is something that I think people don't always think as much about. And I think the other thing is about evolving and changing. So if you look at, say, the retail industry, I think something that is we've noticed here in Australia, it's been in the media a lot, is that retail businesses in Australia have been extraordinarily slow to adopt online shopping as part of their experience. So a lot of Australian shoppers have shopped overseas online because they can get it cheaper, and so Australian retailers have suffered simply because they're not offering the customer experience and the customer service that people want.
Sure.
So people will shop overseas. So I think those two things. I think the impact of digital social media, businesses evolving and changing fast enough, because it's the ones that are agile and who can move quickly. If they look at things like Instagram or what people are able to sell and create the customer experience and integrate that, it's not just walking past a shop front anymore.
It's so much more, right?
Totally.
So one of the things I also heard is that the customer is kind of driving the direction of this experience, not the businesses, correct?
Yeah, and I think that that's a bit of a challenge sometimes. It depends on the business that you're in. But I think what I notice, I work with a lot of experts in their field and thought leaders. I think one of the challenges is being able to know when to listen to customers and when not to. Because I always think of that Henry Ford quote where he said, if I listened to what my customers wanted, we would have made faster horses. Sometimes it's that balance, isn't it? You've got to know, I think when I work with thought leaders and experts in their field, is that it's not necessarily playing with the popularity contest. So if they'll say, I need you to look at what's trending, and they'll start writing content, or they'll start marketing around what customers or what people are talking about and what's trending. But the problem with that is that you dilute your business because you're just focusing on what people are talking about, what they want. But sometimes it's being comfortable that what I'm talking about, or my area of expertise, is actually about what people need, and I have to be comfortable that I might not be popular, I might not be, everybody's favourite thing, But, if you're following what everybody is interested in, you become commoditized. So you have to be very careful that you can still stand out, even if customers are wanting it and everyone's following what customers want. Sometimes you have to actually go in the opposite direction.
Yes, that's true. Okay, so you mentioned that you have a best-selling book, and the book is entitled Connect. Leverage your LinkedIn profile for business growth and lead generation in less than 7 minutes per day. Now, a lot of our customers or listeners, well, they're also our customers that are listening to this podcast, some of them are business owners. However, some of them are actually like solopreneurs. So, or, single entrepreneurs doing their thing. If they were, they're trying to grow their business, they're trying to leverage and understand how customer service can help their business and get more leads and more customers. What are some of the, top things that this book really will help them do? And are they really going to see results just by spending 7 minutes a day? Because that's kind of small.
It is, isn't it? So one of the things, and the reason why I wrote the book, I when I first started my business, I'm a solopreneur. I have a team of, I have one staff member full time, and the rest of my team are contractors. So I have writers, I have social media managers, I have those things, but they're all my team. But one of the things that when I first started my business and I left corporate life was that I had some money saved, and I thought, great, I'm going to go out and start my business. And in the first year, I lost about $30,000 in Google AdWords and search engine optimization. And it wasn't that there's anything wrong with those products. They're fantastic. I just spent it on the wrong person who I was probably a bit naive. And this person had said that, that they were an expert and all those types of things. But, I just I might as well have just given the money away because, So, and it was, when that happened, I had a choice. I had to either go back to a job or I had to try and find a way to make it work now with zero budget. And, so what it forced me to do was is start to learn about LinkedIn a little bit more. And so what happened is I thought, well, it's free and I can go and start reaching out to people and contacting them. So this was back in 2009. And but at the time I was also writing profiles for my clients. So they were getting jobs. I was doing a lot of job seeker type work at the time, and branding people. And so as a result, what happened was I used LinkedIn to be able to grow my business, and that was how I learnt from someone in the US and about how the algorithms work and all that sort of thing. But I'm also a bit of a productivity, a bit obsessed around productivity. So I'm not the person who says you've got to spend 2 hours a day on social media or anything like that. So the book was really written for people who are time poor, who just really need it to work for them when they need it to, when they're trying to grow their business, and what are the activities that they need to focus on that will get the growth. So absolutely you can do it. So there are thought leaders, experts in their field we've worked with, and we generally say, you can get your turnover up to probably around the $300,000 mark, just purely through LinkedIn before you even touch a website. So there's, LinkedIn is just so extraordinarily powerful. And for what it did for me at a time when I had no money and I had to try and work out how to grow my business, it puts you in the driver's seat.
Okay.
As opposed to hoping you'll get an inquiry on your website.
Right. I totally understand where you're coming from, but could you give us maybe one or two practical things that you actually did that if they're listening to this now, they could actually say, okay, yeah, I think that could probably work?
Oh, yeah, lots of examples. So if I if I think about a lady, a client, so there's a client that I've got. So two examples I'll give you. One is a solopreneur. So her name is Rachel Burke. She's here in Australia. She actually has a business. She's a sales expert, and she came to me and she said, I'm not very good at lead generation. I'm really good at selling. So I just need more customers. And so what I did with her was showed her the formula and how to get it to work. And so she increased her sales by well over about 66% in 3 months. So we're talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and like, you know, well and truly into the late six figures. So so her sales went up 66% in the quarter that we did. And then if I look at, so I do LinkedIn for lead generation for really large organizations as well as small ones and solopreneurs. In Australia, we have a business here which was a big superannuation company. Now, superannuation in Australia is like money that you put away for your retirement.
Okay.
And we built all the LinkedIn profiles for the staff and for the financial planners for the business. And what I got them to do was, we had a change of legislation in Australia, so it was a great time to educate the market on some of these changes, because nobody was really educating the market. I was out looking, and I said to them, I think you need to run a webinar. I think you need to get out and educate some of these clients. And they got 500 new leads from that webinar. So, and that was purely through leveraging the profiles. And that's at a bigger, we had about 50 staff who had their profiles built. So the opportunities that are in there, like but the thing is with LinkedIn is that I find most people will come to me and say, I've got a LinkedIn account, but I've never achieved any results from it. And then I'll ask them, you know, what does your profile say? There'll often be no content in it, or I'll ask them, how often have you reached out to people? What have you said to them? What have you invited them to? What's your content plan? And they don't have any of that. So LinkedIn doesn't make clients magically appear. Right. You have to go out and find them, but you've got to have really good collateral. And, you know, they make a decision about you in 3 seconds. So you have got to make sure that all your collateral and your profile is so nice and polished and sharp, and that it matches how amazing you are in person, because we only have 3 seconds for them to go, wow, this person knows what they're doing. This person's amazing. I have to talk to you.
And that's really super quick.
It's super fast. Yeah, we don't, and it takes us, you know, to have a profile that really works, like making sure it turns up in search results as well as has that impact when they see you.
Right.
You know, even for our writers, it takes between 4 to 6 hours to do that work. So just for a simple 3 seconds. But the truth is that that's how long they look at it before they will just move on and have a look at somebody else. So we've got to make sure that we make their job, you know, really easy.
Right. Very true. Very true. So basically you're saying then that their profile has to be built out. They need to reach out to people. And when you say reach out to people, is that in joining like LinkedIn groups, or more so sending people a direct message? And what would be your recommendation? I remember I had this guy on a couple of months ago, and he was a LinkedIn expert as well. And like one of the things he mentioned was, you know, from a customer service point of view, you're not just going to send somebody a message, and LinkedIn kind of gives you that option, you know, where do you know them from in terms of connection? And you don't know them, but you're trying to connect with them, and then what's going to make them want to accept your connection if there's no history of, you know, any interaction? Yeah,
I think people need to shift their attention out onto the other person. So, you know, you're looking for what's the common ground or what's the purpose, because the other person is asking themselves, why are you offering to connect with me?
Right.
So you've got to be able to answer the why. So if you're reaching out and you're saying, for example, I reached out to a medical financial planner a couple of weeks ago. I met with him yesterday. Now, if he just looked at my profile and when he connected with me, he would look at my profile and say, why is she offering to connect with me? I don't really understand. But so I explained to him, and emails work very, very well if you need to use those. But I explained to him that, you know, I do a lot of work with doctors. I help them with, you know, their lead generation, but I help them who are going into specialist training programs. And I said, I'd love to catch up with you. I think there's an opportunity for me to perhaps add some value to your clients. If not, that's totally fine. But here are some links. You're welcome to check out what I do. I'd love to catch up with you for coffee one day and see what I can do to help you as well. And so he met with me, and, so it's all started from there. But you've got to focus on, look at their profile, like what is it that they do? And you have to address, people aren't mind readers, are they?
Right.
So you have to just address, I noticed this on your profile, or I noticed that you do this type of work, or I noticed that you're in this industry. We do blah. So, or I do this type of work, or I help people like you in this space. So I thought I'd offer to connect. I think what happens, though, is that just because you're ready to sell doesn't mean the customer's ready to buy.
True.
So
that's a very good point.
Yeah, so when you reach out to people have got to get to know you. So
know, like, and trust, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. They don't know you, so they're going, well, hang on, I haven't even met you. And it's a bit like, I think it's a bit like dating. I remember I went out on a date with a guy once, and he turned up with a backpack, and I said to him, are you have you just come from the gym or something? And he said, no, you never know. Things might go all right.
You're joking.
No, seriously. And well, I thought he was joking, exactly. And I know your thinking, Unique, was the same as mine. And so he said, yeah, and I just laughed because I thought he must be joking. And he said, no, sure enough, he opened up his bag, he had toothbrush, he had change of clothes for tomorrow, his undies. So, and I think LinkedIn's a bit like that, is that sometimes we turn up with a backpack, we're ready to, move in together and, start this relationship and, go in whole hog. But the customer is going, hold on, can we just have coffee first? Like, who are you? So we can sort of scare people and that's when you hear people say, oh, I just get harassed by salespeople.
Right.
So what we've got to do is connect, be light, be friendly, but then you've got to let people get to know you through your content. And only then, Michael Port, who wrote the book Yourself Solid, he says that you have got to earn the right to sell. And he said the problem is most people don't earn the right, and then people, that they scare people away.
Right.
So he said you can then go and ask for the value. You can go and ask for what you want based on the value you've delivered. So in other words, if you've given enough, if you've done enough content, if you've kept visible enough, if you've built enough trust, okay, now you're ready to go and ask for what you want. So one of the things that I do with clients is I'll look at how much value have they given to their audience, because what they'll do is they've given no value, and they will say to me, I want to be able to grow my business on LinkedIn. It's not working. And I'll go, well, you haven't given your audience any value, so you can't go and ask for what you want because you haven't earned it yet.
Right.
So but you can do that in less than 7 minutes a day. It's definitely possible.
Very cool. Okay, so with all of those things that you're doing to ensure that you're leveraging other people's brands, I remember I was reading on your website that you believe personally that people should really be optimizing on their personal brand because people buy you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you share a little bit more about what your concept is on that?
Yeah, and I think this came from, where it first started was really around, when I first started with working for that family. This was long before social media or anything like that. And what I noticed were the stories that people had and the personal connection that they had to the business. And I think that what has changed since then, I was only 14 back then, so that's like 24 years ago now. I think that's right. So a long time ago. But I think that still is prevalent now. Is that the difference though? Is that back then the only way that people really knew who you were was if you were on TV or something, or if you had a big profile in the community, if you were in the newspaper or something like that. And if that was the case, you were kind of semi-famous, I suppose. But now social media has totally leveled the playing field. So I think one of the things now is that if you have if you leverage your name, there is, one, as you would know, we're always looking for what's the unique selling proposition, what's the unique value proposition that you bring to your customer. Because in a world of commoditization or a world of information out there, particularly thought leaders will say to me, well, why would I bother having anything to say? There's been a lot said about productivity, or there's been a lot said, I don't need to write a book to it, or because there's so much stuff out there. And I say, yeah, but there's only one of you. It's your lens, the way you see the world is what makes it unique, because your experiences, your voice, your lens, your interpretation and your insights is what makes it unique.
Right.
So, but having said all that, the thing is that your social media profile, particularly something like LinkedIn, if I look at so the large organizations that I work with, so we might go in and write 50 profiles or 20 profiles or 100 or whatever. The edge that a solopreneur or someone operating under their personal brand or their name is that if you look at LinkedIn, is that you can have a business page, like your business pages, or, those companies have those business pages. But for individuals that work within those big companies, and the biggest threat to big companies is those smaller businesses who have their personal brand, because you have so much more access, you have more agility, you can bring more of you and your personality into it, and you own your profile. Whereas when we go into a large organization, if we ask a team member to work with their profile, we have to make sure that there's a lot of trust with them and the business and us, because they're asking us, we're asking them if we can have their password.
Right.
And we're going to help them build their profile. Now, not everybody is comfortable having a profile that helps them, like, to sell stuff for the business. Now, so a lot of people are a bit resistant to that. But if you're a solopreneur, you can play against the bigger players purely because of you and your profile, and you can access those people and those buyers, whereas big organizations will really struggle with that. And we've seen numerous examples where we've worked with clients, and I'm happy to work with both, but what I do say to people who are individuals or smaller businesses, particularly solopreneurs, is that's the biggest edge they have, is them. And so to make the best use of that, because that's what the big corporates can't do, and that's what they struggle with.
True. That's your USP, for sure.
Totally.
And it can't be replicated. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jane, could you tell us how you stay motivated every day in doing all of what you're doing? Because I'm sure you come across many different personalities, different struggles and adversities, in your field of work, despite the fact that you love it so much. But what are some of the things that you either engage in, whether it be on a physical level or a spiritual level, to really stay motivated every single day?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think, first of all, is that I'm very, just being really clear on your purpose and knowing why you're here and why you're doing what you do. Because, I think motivation really hits you when you've got a choice at 2:00 in the morning between going to bed or finishing that last bit, because you just got to get it finished and you really want to get it done so it can go to a client. And I think that it's in those moments that, your motivation will either work for you or against you. And that's when it's in those moments that purpose is really important. So I think the other things that probably keep me motivated, I am very particular about the people I work with. So as in, I choose to work with thought leaders and experts in their field because they inspire me. And if they can inspire me, then that helps me bring the best to me, that motivates me, and it helps me to inspire others. So I generally will, and even when I choose my team, so I choose people who inspire me. So as opposed to me just focusing on, yes, I focus on bringing the best out of them, but I have to find something in that person that inspires me that says, if they can do that, I can do it. I think it's also really important is to find yourself a a group that you can belong to who are similar to you. So, for example, it could be your industry association. It could be if you're which is we were talking a bit before, Yannick, about the Customer Service Association that you're president of, and that's so powerful and so important because those people get you. And if I look at the thought leaders, I'm part of the thought leaders business school. So those people, I see the work they're doing, and that inspires you too to go, oh, look what they're doing. That's amazing. I can do that. I think those things. And then there's also the basics of, just eat well,
right.
Try to get sleep. I'm in a really busy phase at the moment, and there's a lot of big deadlines and hours at the moment. One of the things that is really easy to slip is sleep, but it's one of those things that I think Arianna Huffington's written that book Thrive, and just the impact of burnout and not getting enough sleep. So I think that's really important too.
True, I totally agree. So I know we spoke a lot about LinkedIn, dovetailing out of the book, but if I was to guess, my next question, your answer might be LinkedIn. I don't know if it will be, but let me ask it just the same. What is the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely cannot live without in your business?
Look, I think if LinkedIn didn't exist, I think there's other ways you could work with it. I think it's that you can still grow your business. So, but I think one within my business. So I'll say LinkedIn, perhaps a given, perhaps. But I think the one tool that I can't live without in my own business is actually an app I created, and I didn't create it to sell. Like, it's not designed to be Angry Birds and sell billions of dollars of it, but I really created it out of I spent some time as a productivity consultant working with really large corporates, and one of the things I found when working with, I did a lot of work helping CEOs and EAs to be able to work really well together, and what I found was it was the communication channel between the CEO and the EA and getting them working really well together. One of the things that held it back was speed of the communication between meetings and on the run. And I was looking at Concur. Concur is an IT company, and they talk about the on-the-go economy, and how there's this shift to, so much around, whether it's websites and platforms and things, around doing things on the go. So the app I've built is an app, and it's called Memo Mailer. And so MEMO-MAILER.
Nice.
And so it's on memomailer.com, and it's also on iTunes. So the way that it works is that it has a button on it. So it has two buttons, actually. Two buttons is the paid version, which is like $3, but the free version has one button. And one of the things that I found was that being able to delegate things quickly or capture ideas was one of the things that added the most value to people's businesses, but also held them back if they couldn't get done. So the purpose of the app is you hold down the button and you speak into your phone as you're holding down the button. And as you let go, that automatically sends it off to your inbox. So it's super fast. You don't have to, ring your assistant and wait for them to pick up or leave a message, or you capture, ideas come along at really inconvenient times or distractions. And so you have to catch them. You have to have a device to make, or a tool to be able to make sure you capture those things. So the reason why I saw somebody who built a similar thing and they never renewed it on iTunes, and I reached out to them, and that was when I first had something like that a few years ago, and I got so frustrated that they didn't rebuild it. So I just built it again, a newer, better version of it, which is now Memo Mailer, and I built it with my colleague Dermot Crowley, who's an expert in productivity, and he's written the book Smart Work, which has been released, and it's just hit bestseller in Australia here as well. And that's the app that I definitely cannot live without. I ended up building the thing myself because I needed it so badly.
Wow, that's amazing. So you said Memo, and that's MEMO-Mailer, MAILER, and it's available in the App Store, and it's also available on the Google Play Store, correct?
That's correct. That's the way.
Awesome. All right. So I know you've mentioned a couple of books since we've been having this conversation. Are there any books that you can think of that maybe you mentioned already that you'd like to reinforce, or books that you haven't mentioned that have definitely had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah, there's probably a few, and I think probably the first book, and this person has probably had one of the biggest impacts on me, and it's the head of the Thought Leaders Global Business School, which I'm a mentor on and on faculty. So the person who set this up is Matt Church. So he's here in Australia, based in Sydney, and he's written the book Sell Your Thoughts. And he has spent 30 years helping people who are experts in their field to commercialise their ideas. So I work closely with Matt and the business school faculty. Matt is one of the third most booked speakers on the eSpeakers site. If you look at that's a site that's quite popular for speakers. So he's third most booked speaker globally on that site. So he travels the world speaking, but he's the expert in thought leadership, if not globally. So I would say Matt's book, Sell Your Thoughts, is, and Matt himself have had the greatest impact on me. I think a couple of other books, I talked about Michael Port, Book Yourself Solid, which is numerous time bestseller, an extraordinary book. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. It's a classic, but, it's unbeatable. I think someone else who I really admire and I think I met recently, and I think her work is really powerful for people, is Sally Hogshead. And she's written the book called How the World Sees You. And she's created a diagnostic and questionnaire that helps people with their identity around what makes them fascinating. And so I had the good fortune to meet her. She's won hundreds of awards, and I met her at the National Speakers Convention in July. Her work has really, I know it's helped me and it's helped other clients. So I would say those, and other people like Seth Godin, of course, with linchpins, and with his, I think he's up to his 18th, 19th book at the moment. And yeah, I think his work is extraordinary as well. So there are probably a few to name.
Nice, very nice. I love it. I love all the books you mentioned. So the persons that are listening to this podcast, those books are all available on Amazon, guys. So if you're taking note of the books that Jane mentioned, you can definitely head over to Amazon. If you're not a big reader, there's also the Audible version. So, books can be consumed through listening as well. And I think some of the persons that Jane mentioned also are podcast hosts, correct?
Yeah. I think Michael Port, definitely. And who else? I think was Seth. Certainly Seth is certainly. I think at the moment in iTunes on management and marketing and management, I think that Seth's always up in the top 3. Yeah. So yeah,
for sure. All right. Can you share with us what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something that you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Oh, the great question. I've put together a list of all the projects that need to be done before Christmas, and it just keeps growing. I would say the thing that excites me at the moment is a piece of work that I'm working on. What came about as a result of doing this LinkedIn work was that people would come to me for LinkedIn, and there were a couple of clients I started to work with on, and I made a couple of assumptions of things that I thought their business already had, and I had started to get into the work around LinkedIn, and then I stopped and said, have you got this in place, and have you got that, and where's that? And they looked at me blankly and said, what are you talking about? So what I started to notice was that as a result of doing the LinkedIn work, I noticed that people, quite often they weren't doing some baby steps first.
Right.
And so I'm almost at the point where this tool I've created, which is called, just finalising the name, but it's called the it's going to be called the Lead Generation Indicator. And so the purpose of that is before you do but it's specifically designed for people who are experts in their field. And because one of the things that often happens when they start with me is they will say, I want to go out into this world of being the expert, but I don't have any list. Like, I'm struggling to grow it because I don't have list. Or, so I'll go, okay, here's where we start. So so the diagnostic and the questionnaire will be able to help people. It's identified 12 activities to help grow your business. And even if it's from scratch, like even if they've got no clients, and to be able to know exactly where to start, and they can prioritize those steps. So LinkedIn is in there and how that can work, but I find so that will have the website soon. The plan is to have the book very shortly. I'm considering building the app in it, but I'll see how this bit goes first. So I'm very excited about that because I think it's going to be so helpful for those people who have an expertise and who they just really struggle to take it out and commercialize it, and also to take that message out to the world. They just don't know where to start. So I think it's going to be really valuable for them before perhaps they start on things like LinkedIn and other, Facebook ads or whatever that might be.
Right. Very true. All right. So with all of that brewing up and all the other projects that you said you have working on for before Christmas, and I'm sure you've got tons in the pipeline for 2017, can you share with our listeners if they want to connect with you further, they want to reach out to you on LinkedIn, they want to be a part of your journey, how can they find you online?
Yeah, very welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Usually that's a good place to start because I share a lot there. But if they don't have LinkedIn, that's totally fine. So you can jump on Facebook. So I have a Facebook personal and business page. I treat both like business because, again, people want to connect with people. So I found, I gave up on making my personal profile just personal stuff. So because of that, people just want to connect with people. So if you want to reach out, just let me know you heard on the podcast, and then I know, and that's totally fine. And of course, there's other places like Instagram. I'm on there as well, and Twitter, and yeah, they're probably the best places.
Okay, and on all your profiles, you're Jane Anderson across all consistently, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. Are you one of those new persons that have logged on to Snapchat and Periscope?
Yeah, I've done a little bit on Snapchat. I usually do it a bit more while I'm traveling. So yeah, I think Snapchat's a really interesting concept. So most of my audience aren't as young as some of the Snapchat audience, but I think it's quite interesting and I like experimenting with it. I've had a bit of a play with Periscope, and my challenge is I'm often delivering something and then on a plane, and the timings don't always work out very well. I think people are usually asleep by the time I get to sit down and do something with it.
I know what you mean.
So, but I think Periscope's going. I think Facebook Live, with that going live, and now then that whole competition with Periscope is kind of interesting. Facebook Live is certainly getting a lot of traction,
right? And
so I'll be looking into that a little bit more, probably a little bit later in the year. Yeah, so I think people want to connect with the human being, and quite often in real time now, don't they?
True, very true. All right, so we can connect with you on Instagram, we can connect with you on LinkedIn, we can connect with you on Facebook, and you are Jane Anderson across all platforms. And
yes.
If they want to log on to your website, it's just type in Jane Anderson Presence Expert, and all of your profiles will come up, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, now to close off our interview, one of the things we love to ask our guests is, during times of adversity and challenges in your life or even in your business, do you have one quote or saying that you kind of refer to each time? Is there, do you have one of those?
I certainly do. And it's a Winston Churchill quote, and he says, when you're going through hell, keep going. So that's the one that I always use. I have it on my wall. It sticks with me everywhere.
Wow. When you're going through hell, keep going.
Yep.
All right. That's a good one. So I guess no matter what challenges you're being faced with, just keep moving. As Nike says, just do it, right?
Just keep moving. Yep, just don't stop.
Yeah. It's hard sometimes, though, especially when you feel like you've been defeated so many times. But I suppose, as you said, once you reinforce that message into your brain, it now becomes a part of like the subliminal message that you hear subconsciously to keep you going.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, and that one can sound a little bit flat or negative, but I think when you're in that, I find for me when I'm in a really tough period, I find something light and, fluffy doesn't really necessarily connect with me. Mm-hmm. So I find that's a quote that feels like it's in the trench with me.
Right.
And it's going, I know this is so hard. But I think the other thing I would say that is important during those times, I think a lot about, this is probably another book to add to that list actually, is Carol Dweck's work on mindset and, on, that just putting one foot in front of the other and all her work around growth mindset. I do come back to her work a lot if I'm going through a really difficult period. Mm-hmm. And, it's just around keep moving. It's just, even when it's hard, stop focusing on things being perfect. Just focus on progress. And I think if you can do that, then you focus on momentum as opposed to, failure. And you've got to just keep moving.
True. Never stop. Keep going.
Yeah.
All right. So just to reiterate the book that Jane mentioned, it's Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. And you said that's by Carol Dweck, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jane. I think we got a bunch of great information from you. Practical strategies and solutions that we can actually start implementing, and resources that we can access immediately. That's at the at the tip of our fingers once we have internet access, that we can start to use in our own businesses and in our own lives to make ourselves a better version of what we were today.
Yes. Terrific. Thank you.
You're most welcome. So I just want to remind our listeners that you can follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. And also, please feel free, if you want to be more a part of our conversation, we have a private Facebook group called Navigating the Customer Experience Community. Please head on over there and send in a request. We're more than accept you, because the more conversations and dialogue we can have around customer experience, either from a personal level or a professional level, and even on a national level, because everyone wants to ensure that their customer experience in their own countries are top notch. Feel free to hop on over there so we can all become a part of that conversation. So thank you again, Jane.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It was great fun. Thank you.
Great. And I'm your host. Thank you for joining us, Yannick Grant. We really appreciate your support of this podcast. Are you ready to grow your business even more, or improve your leadership skills, or train your team members in the art of customer service? Give us a call at 305-848-0815 or visit our website at www.yannickgrant.com. That's YANNIQUEGRANT.com. Remember, 305-848-0815 or visit our website at yannickgrant.com. Our new online course, Mastering Customer Experience and Increasing Your Revenue, is now available. The link for this will be on the show notes of each episode starting September 7, 2016. The first 2 modules are free, so hop on over, have a look, and take the steps to increase your revenue.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.